Once upon a time, in a world filled with magic, there lived a king and a queen. Though they ruled a prosperous kingdom and were loved by all their people, their hearts carried a deep sadness. For many years, they had wished for a child who would one day inherit the throne and continue their legacy. Yet no royal heir had been born. The king and queen never gave up hope. Every day, they prayed that their dream would come true. Then, one splendid morning, wonderful news arrived. The queen was expecting a child. Joy spread throughout the palace and across the kingdom. Bells rang from the towers, music filled the streets, and people celebrated the happy news. Months passed, and at last the special day arrived. A beautiful baby girl was born. The king and queen were overwhelmed with happiness as they held their daughter for the very first time. She was given the name Aurora. News of Princess Aurora's birth quickly spread throughout the land. Everyone who saw her was enchanted by her beauty. The people loved her from the moment she was born. Wanting to celebrate this precious gift, the king decided to hold a grand blessing ceremony for his daughter. Invitations were sent across the kingdom and beyond. Nobles, villagers, and magical fairies from distant realms were all invited to attend. As the day approached, the palace buzzed with excitement. Servants decorated the halls with flowers and banners. Golden plates were polished until they sparkled like sunlight. Delicious food was prepared for a magnificent feast. Finally, the day of the celebration arrived. Guests filled the palace, eager to see the beautiful princess and take part in the festivities.
The king warmly
welcomed everyone and thanked the fairies for traveling from faraway magical lands to bless his beloved daughter. After a joyful feast, it was time for the blessing ceremony to begin. One by one, the fairies stepped forward to offer their magical gifts to Princess Aurora. The first fairy blessed Aurora with extraordinary beauty, declaring that she would grow into the most beautiful woman in the world. The guests applauded with delight. The second fairy stepped forward and bestowed another wonderful gift. She declared that Aurora's voice would be sweeter than the song of a nightingale. More blessings were about to follow when suddenly, a cold wind swept through the hall. The candles flickered, and dark clouds gathered outside. The joyful atmosphere vanished in an instant. Everyone looked around in fear. A powerful presence had arrived. The grand doors burst open, and a dark figure appeared. A silence fell over the entire hall. It was Maleficent. Shock spread among the guests. Many believed she had vanished 60 years ago and would never return. Yet there she stood, powerful and frightening as ever. The king and queen stared at her in disbelief. While the fairies exchanged worried glances, Maleficent slowly stepped forward and mocked the king for failing to invite her to the ceremony. The king explained that he had no way of reaching her, had never intended to offend her. But Maleficent was not interested in excuses. She announced that she too would give Princess Aurora a blessing. One of the fairies pleaded with her to show kindness. For a brief moment, the guests hoped she might offer a gift like the others. Instead, Maleficent revealed her true intentions. She declared that Aurora would indeed have a beautiful life, but only until her 16th birthday. On that day, the princess would prick her finger on the spindle of a spinning wheel. And when that happened, she would fall lifeless forever. The hall filled with gasps and cries of horror. The king and queen were devastated. The terrible curse echoed through the palace, leaving everyone frozen in fear. Having delivered her curse, Maleficent shattered a window with her magic and disappeared into the stormy night. As sorrow filled the room, one fairy stepped forward. She still possessed a blessing that had not yet been given. Although she could not completely undo Maleficent's powerful magic, she could weaken its effect. The fairy declared that when Aurora touched the spindle, she would not die. Instead, she would fall into a deep, magical sleep. The only way to awaken her would be through the kiss of a true prince. The blessing brought a small ray of hope to the grieving king and queen. Determined to protect his daughter, the king immediately ordered every spinning wheel in the kingdom to be collected and locked away. He also sent guards throughout the land to search for Maleficent, believing she alone could remove the curse completely. But despite years of searching, Maleficent remained hidden. Time passed, and Princess Aurora grew into a beautiful, kind, and graceful young woman. Everyone in the kingdom admired her. Yet as her 16th birthday slowly approached, The king and queen became more worried than ever, knowing the terrible curse still hung over their beloved daughter. As Aurora's 16th birthday drew near, the atmosphere within the palace began to change. The king and queen tried their best to hide their worries, but sadness often appeared in their eyes. Aurora noticed this, and wondered why everyone seemed so concerned whenever she asked. No one could bring themselves to tell her the truth about the curse. Meanwhile, the palace guards remained vigilant. Every entrance was watched, and every corner of the kingdom was searched in hopes of finding Maleficent. Yet she remained hidden, and no one knew where she was. But destiny has a way of finding its path. On the morning of her 16th birthday, Aurora wandered through the palace, unaware that her fate was drawing near. As she explored, she came upon a forgotten room where the old spinning wheels had been stored many years before. The room was quiet and mysterious. Then her eyes fell upon a single spinning wheel, standing in the shadows. Curious, Aurora slowly approached it. She had never seen such a strange object before. As if guided by an unseen force, she reached out her hand toward the spindle. The moment her finger touched it, the curse was fulfilled. Aurora suddenly became weak and collapsed to the floor. The princess had fallen into a deep magical sleep. Not far away, Maleficent watched with satisfaction before disappearing once again into the darkness. Soon afterward, 3 fairies rushed into the room. They had only just discovered that Maleficent had returned, and were horrified by what had happened. They knew the king and queen would be heartbroken. Refusing to leave Aurora alone in her long sleep, the fairies decided to place everyone in the castle under a magical slumber as well. With their magic, the entire palace fell silent. The king, the queen, the servants, and every person within the castle drifted into an ageless sleep. The fairies gently carried Aurora to her bed and promised that they would find the prince, destined to awaken her. As the years passed, thick vines and towering trees grew around the sleeping kingdom. The once beautiful palace became hidden beneath a forest of thorns. Soon, people across the land began calling it the Cursed Forest. Yet the fairies never gave up hope. They set out into the world, determined to find the true prince who could break the curse and awaken their beloved princess. Years turned into decades as the 3 fairies traveled far and wide in search of the prince, destined to awaken Aurora. They visited countless kingdoms and met many young men, hoping one of them would be the one they were looking for. Some princes seemed brave, but lacked kindness. Others were kind-hearted, yet clearly not destined to break the curse. Time after time, the fairies were disappointed. While they searched the world, they failed to notice that the answer was much closer than they imagined. Back in their homeland, a young boy was growing into a noble and courageous prince. His name was Prince Philip. The kingdom was now ruled by a different royal family, and Philip was known throughout the land for his strength, wisdom, and kind heart. Neither Prince Philip nor his father fully understood why Maleficent remained obsessed with the cursed forest. They feared that if she gained control of it, she would eventually threaten the entire kingdom. Determined to stop her, Prince Philip promised his father that he would put an end to Maleficent's plans once and for all. A great battle soon followed. The kingdom's forces fought bravely against Maleficent and her dark magic. It was a fierce and historic struggle, but in the end, Maleficent was defeated. The kingdom celebrated its victory with great joy. The fairies celebrated as well. At that moment, they finally realized something they had overlooked for years. Prince Philip was the very prince they had been searching for. The answer had been before them all along. Realizing their mistake, the fairies immediately visited Prince Philip and revealed the truth about Princess Aurora and the curse that had kept her asleep for so many years. Philip listened carefully as they told him about the sleeping princess, hidden deep within the cursed forest. Without hesitation, he agreed to help, knowing that destiny was calling him. Prince Philip set out at once to find Aurora and break the curse that had. Prince Philip finally caught sight of the sleeping castle. The once magnificent palace was covered in vines and surrounded by silence. No voices could be heard. No lights shone from the windows. It was as if time itself had stopped. Philip entered the castle and carefully explored its halls. Dust covered the floors, and everything remained exactly as it had been years ago. At last, he reached a grand chamber. There, resting peacefully upon a bed, was Princess Aurora. The moment he saw her, he was amazed by her beauty. She looked as though she had merely fallen asleep moments ago. The fairies quietly encouraged him to fulfill his destiny. Understanding what had to be done, Prince Philip stepped closer to the princess. With true love in his heart, he gently kissed Aurora. At that very moment, the powerful curse was broken. Aurora slowly opened her eyes. The long sleep had finally come to an end. And as the princess awakened, magic spread throughout the castle. The king, the queen, the servants, and everyone else who had been asleep for so many years began to awaken as well. The silent kingdom was alive once more. As the magic of the broken curse spread throughout the castle, life slowly returned to every corner of the kingdom. The king and queen awoke from their enchanted sleep, confused at first, but overjoyed to find their beloved daughters safe and alive. Servants, guards, and noble guests who had been sleeping for years also opened their eyes, unaware that so much time had passed. The palace that had once stood silent now echoed with voices, laughter, and celebration. Aurora looked around in amazement, trying to understand everything that had happened. Prince Philip humbly introduced himself and explained that he had come to rescue her. The fairies then gathered around and told Aurora the entire story, from the blessing ceremony on the day of her birth to Maleficent's curse, the long years of sleep, and Philip's brave journey through the cursed forest. Aurora listened carefully. Though she was saddened to learn about all the years that had passed, she felt grateful to the fairies for never giving up on her, and thankful to Prince Philip for breaking the curse. As time passed, Aurora and Prince Philip grew closer. They admired each other's kindness, courage, and compassion. Before long, they realized that they had found their heart's true match. And so, Princess Aurora and Prince Philip lived happily ever after.